Hey folks, and welcome to Windmill Road, Croydon. Now, this is one of those videos where we shine a light on an area of Croydon that maybe not many others do. There's a lot to tell here. There's a lot of history. And as well as telling the history of Windmill Road itself, we're also going to cover the story of Pacitti ice cream. And I'm delighted to have with me today Richard Pacitti, who is an ice cream Pacitti.
I am an ice cream Pacitti. I am.
Many people come up to him and say, as soon as they hear his name, they say, are you an ice cream Pacitti? Well, we're going to tell that story today. We're going to make our way along Windmill Road, making one or two diversions here and there, and we're going to end up over towards the Princess Road area and the cemetery where some of Richard's ancestors were laid to rest. So, without further ado, let's get on our way. Now, whilst this is mainly Windmill Road, we're actually going to take a very, very quick diversion into Limes Road, because there used to be a film studio here until round about the 1920s. So we're just going to take a very quick look. It's not until you actually get out and explore that you realise just some of the beauty we've got here. That house is called Gloucester. And after we've just done this little cutaway bit, we'll go to where the Gloucester pub was. Number 16 Limes Road is where the studio was located. I'm noticing this insignia over the houses, Richard. You see that over there? You see that little crest above the doors, but it's the same all the way along.
It's the same all the way along, yeah.
Yeah, some have been painted in. I don't know what that means, whether it's the builder's mark and as simple as that.
It looks like it's only on that side of the road.
Yeah. Answers in the comments.
And here's Old Studio Close.
And here we have it, Old Studio Close, as you say. And we'll have a little wander down. I love this detail. Look at that. And as I say, it was about 100 years ago the studios were sold off. Clarendon Studios is one of the references I had. And in fact, that building straight ahead is fairly new, because I believe when I looked on Google, there was an older building there, and I didn't know whether that was connected to the studios, but yeah, residential now. Old Studio Close, nice that they gave it a reference to what was once here. And now we'll head back to where the Gloucester was, now Tesco Express. As the 468 bus goes by, so that is Tesco Express, but that was where the Gloucester pub stood.
That's the site of where a V1 rocket fell during the war, and whatever was there would have been completely destroyed by that. The pub would have been built soon after the war.
This is the main junction. So we've got some more modern buildings here, the Halfords, the Lidl. White Horse Road straight ahead. And my mum used to live in Saxon Road, which is just off of White Horse Road, and remembers going down to get Pacitti ice cream. So when it's safe to cross, we're going to go back to Windmill Road and start to talk about that story in a bit more detail.
On the right here is a Halfords now. In my memory, there used to be a very large wood yard here, and there was a TARDIS police box outside.
So round about here.
I remember it being in the 70s that there was an enormous fire here, and the woodyard caught on fire. You know, you could see the flames and the smoke for miles around.
It says Metropot, but it certainly wasn't always Metropot. This was the public baths building, wasn't it, Richard?
So this was the public baths and wash house. So in the days before people had their own bathrooms and their own washing machines, so local people would come here not only to have their once a week bath, whether they needed it or not, but also to do their washing. And there were huge mangles and big tubs where women would come and do their washing. And there's a sort of chimney to the left here, which I don't know is still in use or not. But again, you'd think, well, what was that to do with? Was that part of the... If they did have big boilers and things there to keep all the hot water going? I don't know.
This is Beulah Grove. When I was doing the research into the windmills of the area, there were a couple of strong references. One, Beulah Grove, that we just walked past in the tithe map. And in the entry that goes with the tithe map, there's a reference to a windmill. But the main area associated with windmills was further down the end of the road, near St James's Road. So we'll get to there when we kind of loop round.
as we come along to this area, these are original buildings that I remember, and one has got its signage on saying it's the Windmill Stores. But this area was also an area known as Bangole, and there were a couple of roads here, Foster Road and Wilford Road. It was, I suppose, thought of as being a bit of a rough area, Bangole, and
you had to be streetwise to survive,
yes,
did you?
and you wouldn't necessarily want to be walking around with your gold watch on show if you were walking around these areas.
This does look fairly original, fairly old, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So would this have coaching references maybe, or am I just guessing and romanticising?
From memory, I don't recollect there being a sort of yard there or anything.
But in a road that's been developed a fair amount, these are certainly original buildings here.
And this church building has been a church building for a long time. I think my mum said on VE Day, after the war ended, it was in this church and out in the road that they had the big celebration of the end of the war.
And then we've got Wilford Road Playground here.
So this is the area where, when I used to go and visit my nan, this would be the swing wreck that we would come and play in. See, there is still a swing wreck here.
Yeah.
And a recreation ground as well. It goes into Tyrrell Road. So we used to come and kick a football around here. But this was in the days when there used to be park keepers and people that would keep an eye on you. Maud was the lady who used to sit in the park keeper's hut, and she would be the one that kept us all in control. But she was also the lady that you would go to if you fell over and cut your knee, and she'd put a plaster on your knee for you. But also, in those days, she'd say, "Oi, you, I know your mum." So you were always in trouble if you could be in trouble because, you know, the people that were the park keepers knew your family.
I remember that now. That was a thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
In our era. I know your mum, and you straight away you bolt upright. Okay, right,
yeah.
better change behaviour. Nice one. This is where Sergeant Matt Ratana was killed in 2020. Shocking situation there. They got a memorial there.
And this area, it's a custody suite now, rather than, but it was a police garage. But it was open land. My mother, as a child, used to play over here with her brothers and sisters, and she always referred to it as Mummy's Common. We knew that the V1 bomb fell just down the road, but obviously there was bombing earlier on in the war, and so this was one of those areas. Those of us of a particular age will remember growing up in the 60s and 70s, and there were lots of places that were like bomb sites and bomb-damaged houses, and this was one of them.
Now this looks fairly modern, and it could just be that you can sit down here while waiting for a bus, because the bus stop's just to my left, but it's kind of windmill shaped as well. Quite nice anyway. Clean, looked after, no graffiti, so I guess you wouldn't next to a police establishment, but anyway, very nice.
So we're getting very close to the part where my nan's house was, where my mum grew up. So here we are on the corner of Windmill Road and Windmill Grove, and the building that we can see here used to be Reen's corner shop. Now that was your traditional corner shop, and you could get everything in there, and you'd go in there and they'd have the boxes of broken biscuits, you know, Reen's cat would often be sitting on the bacon slicer and things like that. So standards of hygiene weren't quite as they were nowadays. But it was down Windmill Grove that we would walk to get into the swing wreck.
And the family house just here then?
On the left. And Windmill Grove, as you can see, there's bollards there. That means that you can't... But it was a road that you could drive up and down.
Right.
And you could drive down Windmill Grove. You took it eventually into Princess Road. The thing about the houses that were here on Windmill Road is they had these really, really long back gardens, huge back gardens. So obviously nowadays we don't have the luxury of houses with long back gardens, and so all of those what would have been gardens have been built on now.
And nowadays you'd put another row of houses in that land,
Absolutely.
at least one row of houses.
Yeah,
in,
absolutely.
So,
Yeah. So old pictures that you will see of Windmill Grove, you'll see is just a long empty road. Quite a lot of people would leave their cars there, and as kids we'd go, if cars were sort of abandoned, you'd go and play in the car, sit there pretending that you were driving it and things like that. Oh, we kept ourselves amused.
Oh,
if we weren't in
absolutely.
the swing wreck, we'd be playing in the abandoned cars or on the bomb sites.
Nice one. There was a lot that you could amuse yourself with in this area growing up. Yeah.
So again, here we are where 121 Windmill Road would have been. And when the V1 rocket fell on the end of the road, it damaged the house to the extent that it had to be propped up. And it was at this time, so we're talking 1944. So my mum and her sisters and brothers, and obviously my grandparents, had stayed here all during the Blitz. My grandfather was both Home Guard and Air Raid Warden. So they'd lived through the Blitz and not felt the need for the children to be evacuated. But in 1944, when the doodlebugs fell, and on the evening of, I think it was the 1st or 2nd of July 1944, a doodlebug fell here. And then the next night, another one fell very close as well. And I think that was like the final straw. And after that time, my mum and her brothers and sisters were evacuated down to Cornwall.
This used to be the Fisherman's Arms, Richard.
It did, yes. So this was a pub well used by my uncles. Obviously, as they were younger men, it was literally, they could stagger home after having a cold beverage. But it was a well-used pub. And so there's a question about why a pub in the middle of a town might be called the Fisherman's Arms. And the reason is because to our left, if you walked down to the end of Windmill Road and kept going a little bit further, you come to Boulogne Road, and in Boulogne Road, in Victorian times, there were fishing lakes. So when you'd been fishing all day, you came to the Fisherman's Arms to have a drink at the end. And those lakes were there, I think, until about the 1930s, when the council bought that area and filled in the lakes, and it's now a recreation ground with a swing wreck on the other side. Again, that's the reason why we've got a pub. It's not called the Fisherman's Arms anymore, but that's why it's called the Fisherman's Arms.
Some of you may know this area, well, for one or possibly two reasons. One was the Gillett and Johnson foundry, sort of straight ahead. And also over here was Mr. Cad. Photographers will remember that. I think the business is still going. It's in another part of town now, or up in London.
I think it's in Pimlico now.
Pimlico,
yeah.
Nice part of town. So yeah, so that's probably, you may know Windmill Road just for that if you're a keen photographer. So we've got some millstones here. One's propped up, one's laying down. Not sure if there should be a plaque or something here, but the most famous part of this section of Windmill Road was the Pacitti ice cream business.
So this is where the Pacitti ice cream factory was. So there was a double-fronted building with doors next to it, and there was the ice cream factory behind and the business offices for the ice cream business, and then next to it a shop where Uncle Harry and his wife lived, and that was like a shop that sold ice cream and confectionery and things like that. And the building was there until the company was wound up in the late 50s, early 60s. And what people might remember from here afterwards was the Tooting Tyre Company. So I remember the Tooting Tyre Company being here as well.
Were they in the exact same premises?
They were in the premises, yeah.
And then this would have been pulled down in more recent times.
So this whole area, Windmill Road, Queen's Road, parts of St Saviour's Road, this was all compulsorily purchased by the council, I think, in the 1970s. And so there are really no remnants of any of the buildings that were there that I would have known growing up. And the whole area has been redeveloped as sort of council housing.
I'm just visualising my mum, who would have been at Saxon Road, coming down here, dodging those traffic lights. Now, it's probably been easier to cross the road then and then coming along, and she still remembers to this day, bless her, the taste of Pacitti ice cream, as many do. When you do a talk about it, Richard, and
yeah,
I've seen that a few times. It's been great fun. And there's generally been someone there who's got a reasonably strong recollection.
Got a recollection. Yeah, I mean, people of a certain age, because the ice cream business really ended in the early 60s.
Yeah.
So people of a certain age will remember it. And that's why I get asked when I say my surname, they say, "Oh, are you an ice cream Pacitti?" And I say, "I am an ice cream."
With pleasure, you tell them that you are.
I am an ice cream Pacitti. Yeah.
Come along to your next talk.
Come to my next talk. Yeah.
So the Inspire Day Nursery in the middle, that's the Mr. Cad building. And then over here, a rather nice example, and that's at the very top there on the corner. It says Union Cottage, Windmill Road, 1832. So actually predates the Victoria reign. Nice style building. And we think there might be a story here as well, Richard.
Well, my mum said, now whether it was the big house that we just came past, but she talked about those, oh, that house is very old, and I think she's probably meaning the one from 1832.
Yeah.
And she said there was a sea captain that lived in there. So we might need to see if there's any truth to the story that a sea captain used to live in that house.
So if I'm able to find anything out when I'm editing, that will be now on screen. So we're going to have a little wander further down here towards the end and celebrate some of the marvellous Victorian houses of Croydon, because there's a fair mix along here, and then we'll come back and head towards the other part of the Pacitti story, the ice cream story, and some other things that take our eye.
It might be residential now, but for a few years, this was where Duke Mackenzie had his boxing gym upstairs. And when I was at work at Mind, we used to run our mental health boxing project from up in that room. So there you go, another thing.
So this is St Saviour's Road.
St Saviour's Road, and on the left-hand side of this road, we've got some of the original buildings. And then on the right-hand side, this was all part of the area that was compulsorily purchased and demolished completely. So you've got like the old and the new.
So I see a sign there, which may not be picked up on camera, but just where the cars are on the right here, Windmill Estate. I've seen that a couple of times. So that will be the area that was basically repurposed, redeveloped.
Yeah. And that would have included Windmill Road, Queen's Road, parts of St Saviour's Road, parts of Princess Road, Grace Road, all of those areas. That was all redeveloped in a really, really pretty large piece of work when the area was compulsorily purchased by the council and redeveloped.
So we've got the houses here, which are got the basement level and then the steps up to the front entrance. No date markings on them. And then St James's Park.
My mum used to say that around here, and St James's Park was, and the fact that it's called park rather than road or means that it probably was quite nice and quite salubrious, but there were bigger houses here, and this was at a time when people, even middle class people, could afford to have a live-in maid and things like that. So you'd have either the basement or the attics would be where the kind of live-in servants would be.
And actually, as we go along here, they're on a much grander scale. They've got an additional story above, still got the basement level, and then up to the main entrance level. But it's almost like as we progressed along the road, we've gone from the almost workers' cottages a bit further back, and then we're getting grander the further we're going along here.
Yeah. And yeah, so we're within a short walk of Bangole, which was obviously not a very salubrious area, to a place where you've got these quite grand-looking houses, really.
And, you know, I'm assuming, and I'm probably safe in my assumption, that they're all subdivided now, but you can imagine when they were, as you mentioned, the maid earlier, Richard, you know, there would have been staff in these houses.
Yeah, these would have been, you know, either the lower floors or the upper floors would have been where staff lived. Certainly people, even if they didn't have live-in staff, this would have been at a time when middle-class people all had maids and cooks and things like that.
But yeah, I mean, all the way along here, so nice Italian 8-window design there. Because the way the Victorian builders worked, it would be building 2, 3, 4 or whatever at a time. They didn't have the money to build an estate worth of houses in those days, but that's why the style might only ever pertain to just one small group of houses, but they're really pleasing to the eye, these. Again, I'm looking for date references, but unsuccessfully so. But they're all Victorian style, aren't they? We've got the coins on the side of the wall on that one, which don't exist on any of the others on that particular, or that pair. And then what are detached here with an extension on the side. I mean, it looks possibly modern in the same style, but no, I think it will have its origins straight opposite. of an original house, and a very grand one there as well. Lovely statement archway there over the front door. And then Ashurst Lodge at the end, first time we've seen one with a name.
Now, whether it's always had that name or whether it's now, it says vacancies, so whether it's a guest house or
little
something
canopy
like
there
that.
that's
Yeah.
canopies round the windows, almost like the old seaside hotels.
Yeah.
And then we got, this was your school, was it, Richard?
This
On the end here?
wasn't my, this is where my sister
Oh, your
went,
sister.
went
Okay.
to school. So this was a school in the 50s and 60s, been repurposed now. Yeah, so this building's clearly been here a while. And then diagonally opposite, where there's a whole brand new school now, that used to be where the local maternity hospital was.
So is that way?
Yeah, so that's what I think it's called the Chestnut Grove or Chestnut Lodge or something.
Oh, right, I know.
The-
Yes, just on
here.
the side here.
Yeah. So this was the maternity hospital. At a time when, you know, instead of having great big general hospitals, there would be cottage hospitals and local hospitals and obviously a separate hospital that would be in, so this was the maternity hospital, which is now occupied by Chestnut Park Primary School.
In my research to the mills of Croydon, the area that we're at now, when this was Croydon Common, which was up until the first part of the 19th century, this was enclosed and marked on the older maps as where there were a mill or mills. It's difficult to pinpoint the precise location on some of them, but we've got a rough idea, it's documented. So this, what is very well developed now, we just mentioned the Chestnut Park Primary School, that sort of general area is where there was a mill setup of some description. As we walk back towards Queen's Road, just to show you some of these nice architectural examples on the other side of Windmill Road, all fairly uniform. I would suggest these were probably more of a larger building scheme or a rich developer. And I'm kind of seeing Victorian, but with a nod to Edwardian. So I would say pre-Great War. But there's some nice decoration on the brickwork, and we've got some gable detail here and there. So there's a real mixture of the way Windmill Road was developed, isn't there? And if you think that kind of carried on with that compulsory purchase thing, really. So we could almost tell a whole historical tale just by looking at the houses up and down Windmill Road.
And certainly some of the houses on the other side of St Saviour's Road, they were very grand. They were equally as grand as some of the ones here, 3 or 4 stories high with, you know, servants' quarters and things like that. So, but they all went as part of the redevelopment as the area.
So perhaps something like some of these?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
because the ones that were left, when you did that thing where we pointed out between the left and the right side of the road, the ones on the left were the general kind of, you know, ground floor, first floor setup.
So when you look at the older maps, I mean, even when I was looking at some of the older maps of Foster and Wilford Road, you know, one side of the road would be developed and the other side wouldn't be. So it would be, you know, quite believable that in Victorian times, one side of the road would be developed and the rest of the side was just open land. And then as time went by, you know, developers or individual people bought up land on the other side of the road. And so you've got 2 different periods of architecture in the same road sometimes.
Yeah. See, there's some lovely detail up here, isn't there?
So if you look above, you can see this was all developed at a time when a bit more thought went into the design of buildings. Below level, you can see these are all newer shops, but you can see above that there's a lot of age and a lot of thought gone to these. So I remember these shops from my childhood, and one of the shops, and it was a bit of an oddity even in those days, was called Mr. Self. And he sold all kinds of strange electrical things and odds and ends and stuff like that. But my mum said that was the place where you would go and get your accumulator charged. Now, for those of you who don't know what an accumulator was, In the days where the only entertainment that you had was a radio, it was run off not batteries, but a thing called an accumulator. And you would have that, and you would take it to a local place, swap over your one that wasn't charged for one that was charged, and bring it back home again. So Mr. Self was the place where you went to get your accumulator charged.
Wow, I've learnt something today, so thank you for that.
There you go.
Right, we are entering Queen's Road.
One of the reasons we're walking down Queen's Road is because this is where Queen's Road Cemetery is. And we're going to have a look at some of the things in there a bit later on. But again, this is part of the area that's been completely redeveloped. There were a lot of shops and things along here, pubs and
all along this section here.
Both sides of the
Both
road, yeah,
sides,
shops and pubs. There was like a removals firm called Skinners or Turners, and they had like a big depository on the corner of Queen's Road as well. People might remember that. This would have all been shops and houses, sorts of things, pubs. So one of the things that we did find, well, you found it for me, Phil, was a press cutting about my great-grandmother's funeral procession that happened in 1930. And it talks about when she died, the funeral procession came along here, and as a mark of respect, all of the shops that were in Queen's Road closed for the day. And it sounds like it was a really grand affair, with literally hundreds of people coming out to pay respects to my great-grandmother. Hundreds of wreaths and floral tributes being paid. So again, it sounds like it was a really big affair, my great-grandmother's funeral. And then my great-grandfather, when he died, similarly. So this was at the time when, as a mark of respect, you know, funeral processions would come along the road, gentlemen would take their hats off, people would bow, shops would close as a mark of respect. So that, you know, take yourself back, well, getting on for nearly 100 years ago now, in 1930, when that happened, that would have been what happened along the road here. So we can see halfway down Queen's Road is where Windmill Grove now comes out. But then a bit further along, and we'll see how much of Grace Road we could see. So this block, and my great-grandfather ended up owning most of this block, even though he came to this country with nothing. At the end here, there were stables.
What, so just about here?
Yeah, so you would walk down the end of Grace Road, and then there would be a cut through into Queen's Road, and there were stables and all sorts of things here. No physical sign of it anymore. It's all long gone as part of the redevelopment that went on.
These are built in a slightly different style to some of the others we've seen, different brick and everything, so I guess this was done at a different time.
I mean, I certainly remember
70s style, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in the shop in number 4 Princess Road, and my grandmother lived there. But I remember at the time that the place was compulsorily purchased, and she had to move out. So that would have been in the early 70s. So I think the development happened at around about the same time. But obviously these ones are built slightly differently from the ones on our left at the moment.
So we just entered Princess Road from Queen's Road, the cemetery's behind me, and this would have looked very different back in the day, wouldn't it, Richard?
Well, I was actually born in number 4 Princess Road, and number 4 Princess Road was on the corner of Princess Road and Grace Road,
so
and you can
just
see
to the left
Grace
of the
Road is
picture,
still there. But then number 1, 2, 3, 4 Princess Road and the pub on the corner were all eventually owned by my great-grandfather, Tommaso. The first signs that we had of him living here, he was renting 1 or 2 rooms in number 1 Princess Road. Within 10, 15 years, he managed to build up such a business that he owned this little bit.
So we've got the houses that Richard's family owned behind us. This is now Queen's Road Cemetery, and the air raid shelter in the corner, that's all blocked off now.
Whereas you've got railings now, this used to be a brick wall. My grandfather, Dominic, with his ice cream barrow, and then photographs on this side of the road, on the corner, which would have been outside the shop, on the corner of Princess Road and Grace Road. In one of the photographs, in the background, you can see the tower of what was the workhouse.
So that's in, my finger's in screen, that's in that general direction, which
Yeah.
is...
So if we went in that direction, in the direction you're pointing, you'd go along a bit more of Queen's Road, and then you'd come to Paulson's Road. Paulson's Road, my mum always said, was called Death and Poverty Street, because on one side of the road you had the cemetery, and on the other side you had the workhouse.
So Richard, this was a play area, was it, back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, as well as going over the wreck or going around to see the horses in the stables behind where the shop was, this was a great place to come and play when we were kids. I'm assuming it's all bricked up so that you can't get in there now.
Yeah.
But places like old air raid shelters and bomb-damaged houses were places where kids used to play, and this was one of them. So one of the stories that I tell when I'm talking about my family is that the family had some good fortune in the 1930s when my great uncle Arch won the Irish sweepstake, and he won quite a lot of money, a sum of money that would have been equivalent to like £500,000, £600,000 in today's money, and that meant that he could buy his own place, because previously he'd been living in the family home in Princess Road. So he bought a shop and with accommodation associated with it on the corner of Queen's Road and St Saviour's Road when Uncle Arch lived there. And I used to walk home this way from school, and I always used to have lots of friends that walked with me, because they knew that if they were with me and we walked past Uncle Arch's place, he'd always give us an ice cream. So if you want to become popular at school, not that I did this by design, living in a sweet shop and having a great uncle that gave free ice creams to people was a way to make friends and influence people.
A winning formula.
A winning formula, yeah. Yeah, so my Uncle Arch, on a day like today, nice and warm and sunny, would be sitting outside where that gate is behind his place. And that's where, if he was sitting outside and I walked past on the way home, I'd be given some ice cream or a lolly.
So this was a shop originally.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, whether it's been divided into two, whether it was one big shop, I can't remember, but it was that I definitely remember my Uncle Arch sitting on a chair in just there in the sunshine in the afternoons.
And as it's a wonderful day, I thought rather than just refer to it, capture some nice footage of this wonderful building. And then we have Croydon 1865.
Now, one of the things that my mum always said was one of the reasons why this area was bombed so heavily is that there were quite a lot of buildings around here with clock towers that looked like they might be factories or whatever it might be. Obviously, you had the Gillett and Johnson's clock tower, and even the tower here of what was the workhouse. So whether that's true or not, whether that just was an area that got bombed a lot anyway because that's just the way things were.
I mean, there were many industrial units and factories and things around there, and I suppose if they coupled that together, they probably thought, well, we'll just go for it, even though it was also heavily residential as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this building here, 175, Richard, we think that may have been
the Newton Arms. Certainly there was another pub along here called the Newton Arms, and when I gave one of my talks about my family, someone who used to frequent the Newton Arms said, we always knew when your granddad was coming round to sell the ice cream, because he'd park outside the pub and he'd ring a bell, and we knew that to put our beer down and to go out and buy a cornet.
Love it. So we're now entering Queen's Road Cemetery. So that path go round to the air raid shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sort of meanders around the outside of the cemetery, whereas this is like more... And obviously, when there were funerals, this would be the main avenue that the vehicles, back in the days, it would have been horse-drawn carriages that would have brought coffins, and there'd have been, processions of lots and lots of people. We talked about my great-grandmother and great-grandfather's funerals, which sounded like they were real sort of community events, really, where literally hundreds of people would turn up if someone well-known locally had passed away. We can see that there are some very grand graves here. I mean, I'm assuming that these are some moneyed families. So I don't know who these people were, but this looks very grand, doesn't it?
Yeah.
J.H. Hobbs of Norbury
Hall.
Norbury Hall. What was Norbury Hall? Then in front we've got the War Memorial, And then the chapel, you'll see, is divided in two. And that's because one side is the Catholic chapel.
That's on the left.
On the left. And the one on the right is the Church of England chapel. But again, a lovely, lovely building, beautiful building. Up here to my left is the Catholic area, which is where my family are all buried. So this is the grave of my great-grandfather, Tommaso, although his name is spelt with the English spelling on the grave, Thomas, and my great-grandmother, Sabina. And we talked a bit about their funerals and what a big affair they were around here. You can see it's quite a substantial grave. And then buried in the same plot, and these were his daughter-in-law and her baby, who both died in 1918 of the flu that followed the First World War. So that's quite poignant that, they're all in there together. Behind the grave is the grave of Canon McLaughlin, and he was the local Catholic priest. He's mentioned in quite a lot of the stuff relating to my family. So he would have done, weddings and baptisms and that, and he would have been based at St Mary's Catholic Church down on Wellesley Road. But around here you can see other priests and sort of folk from the Catholic Church are buried around this area as well. So this is my great Uncle Arch, who used to give me ice creams when I walked past his place. That's his grave, Uncle Arch, my Auntie Minnie. This area, this is where they ended their days. They came here, they were born and brought up and lived in these few streets, and then when they passed away, they were laid to rest in the local cemetery.
Because your original family that came over and set up in Croydon, if you like, that would have been an arduous journey, wouldn't it? We think they came by foot.
Yeah, they walked. They walked from a little place called Filignano in central Italy, and they walked to Croydon. And this is where my grandfather, Dominic, is buried, and my grandmother, Millie, and my dad's in here as well, and my Uncle Jim. So, again, Dominic, you can almost literally see where number 4 Princess Road is from where we're standing, and that's where he is laid to rest. And then further along is Uncle Harry's grave. Sue, whose obviously real name was Assunta, but they were called Sue and Harry, although actually Sue and Harry were not their given names, and their infant child who died, unfortunately. So, yeah, here's where I'm from, literally.
Richard, thank you very much for this.
You're welcome.
It's been an amazing trip. I thought I knew a little bit about Windmill Road. I feel I know a lot more now. And it's great that I can bring you along, someone who's born and brought up in the area. Not only that, you've done quite a bit of research alongside it. And also it's a tale of success from your family that came over. And it wouldn't have been easy for them.
No, they walked here. As it says, they walked here. My great-grandfather and his wife and their first child, it had taken them 3 months to walk from Filignano to Croydon, and they started with nothing and built up a big business. And when they passed away, they were kind of important members of the local community, figures, sort of local people that were liked and respected. So it's nice. I feel very, very positively about them.
That's brilliant. And yeah, it's good to hear this success. I think for me, it shows you what you can get if you really put the effort in. They had to, I say fight battles, but there would have been some challenges early on.
I mean, you try being an Italian citizen living here during the Second World War. Italian people were interred, and there was a lot of bad feeling towards Italian people during the Second World War in this country. Fortunately, they'd either been naturalised or were born in this country, but they had to make a big effort to distance themselves from, what the politics of Italy at that time.
And of course, in terms of naturalisation, we found a very important signature on one of the documents, didn't we?
We did. So, and this is the beauty of family history research and local research generally. Things that are kind of family rumours, you can hopefully track down the evidence to prove that they're not a rumour, in fact that they're true. And it is the case that Tommaso's naturalisation was approved by the then Home Secretary, who was Winston Churchill.
Amazing. I don't know if I can top that, so I'm going to say thank you very much once again. If you've liked the video, please hit like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please hit subscribe. If you'd like to support what I do for a very small monthly donation, just hit join. It's funny how things happen, isn't it?
It is funny how
We've
things
literally just finished filming the closing sequence, and we bumped into someone who basically is pretty much completely connected with you, your family. They knew you, you knew them, and their various relations, all from back in the day. 3 people today have stopped us, but all slightly different stories.
Yeah.
But all very much connected with the area, which is it's wonderful, really. I didn't film all of them, but we had a good old chat, and that was lovely because, again, it's just you speak to someone else who remembers certain things or certain people, and then you remember others, and you put it all together. And great story.
Yeah. So we were just talking to someone who's one of the Coxheads, which is another big family from around here. So she said, "Oh well, we lived at number 5 Princess Road on the corner, on the other corner of Grace Road, and lived at it." And so yeah, oh, I remember him. Do you remember him? So yeah, it's great that there are still people round here. I mean, she did. I won't give it away on film, but she did tell us her age now. So she is a lady of a certain age, but was giving the grave a good old wash down, wasn't she? So
yeah,
she was...
but absolutely remembers the ice cream. And again, from what you've told me today, Richard, and from adding that extra element, I do feel I've got a very, very good understanding of what this area was like back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, she was talking some of
Real community.
Some of the stories that Maureen was just telling about, growing up and what it was like round here, and the shops and what people did for amusement, and people that were bookies, runners before being a bookmaker was a legal thing to do, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's been lovely, and meeting someone at the end was like the icing on the cake. Really,
it is.
isn't it?
So usual thing, like, subscribe, join if possible. But we're signing off now, so cheers again, Richard.
Thank you very much.
See you in the next one.
Cheers now.